You know, I don't think I've ever mentioned this before, but when I first moved to the Washington, D.C. area back in the 80s, I lived in Columbia, Maryland, right there in the shadow of Fort Meade and the National Security Agency. And I knew people who worked at the NSA, and you never really could get them to tell you anything about what they did or what kind of projects they worked on.
Well, they could tell you.
Yeah, but they'd have to kill you. That's what they used. In fact, they used to say that all the time. And you'd be at a dinner party, however, and you would mention the name James Bamford. And you would get a spirited debate from those people. They didn't like this guy one whit. Because James Bamford, back in the day, wrote a book called The Puzzle Palace. He is sort of the acknowledged expert about the NSA and how it goes about listening on the world. He now joins us on the line. We thought it'd be great to have him here to talk about, all the developments with Edward Snowden. Mr. Bamford, thanks for being with us this morning.
Yeah, my pleasure.
In fact, you were actually threatened with prosecution back when you wrote that first book.
Yeah, they threatened me twice with prosecution, but then when I did the sequel, they actually had a book signing for me at NSA.
I know how far you've come. You've actually spoken at the NSA and did a book signing there. Here's my question. What's really different about what Edward Snowden has done than what you did back in the day through the FOIA?
Well, first of all, what was released to me was released officially to me under Freedom of Information Act. It was just a letter I sent to NSA and Justice Department and other places, and they publicly released documents to me, so they had a chance to go over the documents before they were actually released. With Ed Snowden, he didn't submit any requests. He just walked out with whatever he wanted.
And how do you feel about what you've learned from Edward Snowden's release of information?
Well, it's extraordinary, number one, that he was able to get so much out of there. Again, this is the agency that's run by General Keith Alexander, and under one of his other hats, he's also commander of U.S. Cyber Command, and under that hat, he's in charge of protecting U.S. government communications. And here he has one of his employees who's walking out of the agency headquarters for months with the most secret documents in the agency. So it's rather extraordinary. And then what he released, I thought, was extraordinary, not in terms of what the NSA is doing. I've been writing about that for years, but the extent of it, how widely their eavesdropping has been going on, and how many places they have locations where they're doing their eavesdropping and so forth.
James Bamford is our guest. He's the best-selling author of The Puzzle Palace, a report on NSA, America's most secret agency. You were a bit of ahead of the curve on all of this, Mr. Bamford. And I wonder, all of the intrigue, all of the media reports on Edward Snowden seem to be about him as a person, what's going to end up happening with him. Now we know he's gotten asylum from Russia. But do you think that all of the attention and hoopla on Edward Snowden and questioning what his motives are have sort of taken the media's eye off of what you just pointed out, which was, isn't there something wrong at the NSA if this guy could just walk in and take this stuff so easily? The NSA has a security problem, do they not?
Well, of course, yeah. It's extraordinary to me that General Alexander still has a job. If he was president of a bank and some banking examiner had gone in there and found out that there was no money left in the bank, that person would have been out on the street looking for a job.
Yeah, but they're blaming this 30-year-old and making him the story when the story should really be the NSA. Do you think that the media's focus will go back there? I mean, you've seen these stories trend.
Well, I hope so at some point, but it's this Where is Waldo story, the chase. It's a much easier story. You don't actually have to focus on technology, and it's a simple story to follow. A person's on the run. So, I hope the media at least sometime gets back onto the reality of what really happened, and that's the what NSA does and what NSA lost.
You say that you're sort of surprised by the breadth and the scope of the programs that the NSA has in place to monitor phone calls and emails. But, I mean, some people have said, hey, do you not think that our enemies in the world already had a pretty good sense of this? Is that fair or not?
No, I think they certainly had the same idea that the NSA was listening to communications all over the world. I mean, I've written 3 books on NSA, numerous articles on the agency, and discussed their wide-ranging eavesdropping activities. So I don't think there's any question that the terrorists and so forth know that there's NSA has been eavesdropping.
So what's the damage here?
Well, I think the damage, looking at it from NSA's point of view, is confirmation that this has been going on. There have been other whistleblowers. Numerous times there have been whistleblowers that have come out and said these type of things. But then the NSA would come out a few weeks later and deny it, say, oh, that's not real. We don't really do all that.
Well, we sort of see that happening now, don't we?
Well, it's much more difficult now because the documents are there.
Right.
That's what makes this so different, is that it's not one person's word against the NSA and the director of NSA. It's the document is there. The documents are actually reproduced in the Guardian and the Washington Post, and there's no getting around it. Plus, it's I don't think anybody really had the extent. I didn't even have the extent or know the extent of the domestic activities in terms of eavesdropping on, or at least accumulating every telephone call record that everybody makes. In other words, this phone call we're making right now
is being recorded. That's right.
Well, the number is being dialed, not the actual content, but the fact that you called my number at this particular time and it's lasting this long, and all this data is being recorded in real time by NSA, and it's being stored for 5 years. You know, some grandmother in Topeka, Kansas is calling her next door neighbor, and then that's being kept and stored. So it's a question of why are we doing all this, and that was one of the points that came up in a hearing on Friday, is that the NSA had a backtrack. They originally said, oh, we had this helped prevent 54 terrorist events, and after some hard questioning, it turns out it sounded like it didn't prevent any, that it was pretty much useless. And, you know, that's the point, is that the agency has this mentality where we just have to keep collecting more and more data, and nobody's ever had the clearance or the ability to say no to them until now.
All right. Well, James Bamford, really great to get your insights, given that you are somebody who's been covering the NSA since the 70s. Thank you so much for joining us here. Greatly appreciate it.
Great being on your show. Thanks very much.